Live. Even if it doesn't look like it, I'm live. I am alive. This Sunday was chapter 7. Y'all do your homework? Okay, pass it in. I'm gonna grade it and get it back to you next Sunday. Chapter 7, we're going to talk about the power of preservation. Before we get into the meat of this, let me ask you this. What anomalies, points of interest did you see in the chapter? Things that would be fun to talk about. Anybody? Clean animals? And the unclean. Okay? I'll address that. Anything else? You want me to address that while y'all are thinking about something else? The reason for the having 7 of clean animals is that for 2 reasons. It is the clean animals that were offered in sacrifice, and the clean animals obviously were the ones that it was okay for them to eat. They were not supposed to eat the unclean animals. Remember I told you when we started on this deal, this is a story about the Jews to the Jews. And so some of this stuff, doesn't have any academic, relevance to the way we live our life. So the whole thing has to be looked at from a standpoint of what is the underlying message in this chapter, because things of this nature, that doesn't mean anything to us. Let me ask you this. How many in here eat catfish? Y'all eat? So y'all going to hell, straight to hell. How many of y'all eat shrimp? Oh, see, y'all going to hell. I'm teasing, but catfish will be served in hell, and shrimp. So you may want to go. No, no. Those are examples of unclean foods, and that happens to be fish. So they didn't have to haul them on the ark. You understand? They were going to be fine in the water. But let me think of something. What is pork? Pork is a 4-footed creature that got on the ark, and but they didn't take 7 of them. they just took 2, and and because that was considered unclean. The pork is unclean. Both the Muslim and the Jewish Orthodox don't eat pork. It's not kosher. So that good question, good observation. What else did anybody see in the chapter? Well, we're going to get to a book called Numbers. And the significance of number 7 is, I'm not going to go way into it, but the number 7 very simply is considered to be the number of completion. But when we get to it, we'll talk about the number 9 in conjunction with that. But number 7 scripturally is considered to be complete. It's a complete week. It's a complete completion. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That one of the funniest deals that what do you call them? Yeah, that Cosby ever did was the whole Noah thing. Yeah. Yeah, that was a funny one. So it's still funny. If you get a chance to listen to it, you'll laugh, especially after we talk about all this. Now it's talked about 7. It was not an odd deal. It was 7 pairs. You don't see that, but it says it. You have to be careful. It says male and female, so it's 7 pairs of clean, not just 7 clean. Anything else? Did you see? You did your homework, right? So what did you see that was interesting in there that we... Were you here when I was just talking about it? Shall I tell her again or charge her $25? They took 7 clean as opposed to 2 of the unclean because the clean animals were animals that it was okay, number one, for them to eat. And well, that may be number 2, actually. Number 1, they only offered sacrifice of clean animals. They didn't do unclean. They didn't. Well, when we're going to get into that, because there's a whole list of them, of what was clean and unclean, but they don't do it here. Which, again, it's a good point because it does what we're talking about. You're going to see, as we continue through this story, that the writer was working backwards to validate what already was being practiced. And so that is a detail that they're not going to give us here, but they're going to give it to us in Deuteronomy. All right? Anything else? Those are all good. No? Well, let's begin. We're going to talk about the power and the responsibility of preservation. This is Genesis chapter 7. We welcome you here. Oh, by the way, we have Cowboy fans in the house, and we have a couple of Steeler fans in the house. I thought we had more. Just one Steeler fan? No, we got at least 2 Steeler fans here. And last week, those of you that watched on film, you know I wore black and gold, and I did that to encourage the Steeler fans, knowing that this week would be a sad day for them. And there's a couple of points I want to make. You know, we got Cowboy fans in the house. We got Steeler fans in the house. After today, first of all, we love each other, too. The Cowboy fans love the Steeler fans, and I think the Steeler fans love the Cowboy fans. If they don't, we'll have an altar call today, and we'll fix that. But regardless of which team wins today, preferably the Cowboys, we're going to still love each other. Sports is a wonderful thing to help every country find unity. And I don't have to tell you that there's some disunity in our country at this point, people feeling really strongly on both sides. But let me just tell you something. There is no possible way for a body, an entity, a nation, a country, a state, a person to make forward progress without a left and a right. And the only way a left and a right can make progress is by negotiation. Do you know that every time your human body takes a step, that it is a constant series of negotiation, the right with the left with the right. You can't move forward without a constant series of negotiation. Now here's one of the things that, if you want to know what to pray for, pray that the left and the right will agree to negotiate with each other and not just stand and try to be obstinate and block each other. The more that each one resists the other, what happens when you resist something? You strengthen it. So we don't need to strengthen locked in positions, whichever side you may be on, left or right. We need to work with each other and we need to negotiate. And there's a lot of things that could happen wonderful for our country going forward if we can just get some negotiation taking place. That's it. Let's get to the power and the responsibility of preservation. Chapter 7 begins like this. Then the Lord said to Noah, say it with me. What did he say? Let's say it together. Come into the ark. Did you notice that? When you read it, did you notice that line? Come into the ark. What does that tell you? He's already there. God's already in the ark. He's inviting Noah into a place that God already is. I want to tell you, God is already there. Wherever you're headed, wherever you're going, wherever you are, God is already there. Isn't that wonderful? You say, well, we should know that. We say God is omnipresent, that God is everywhere. I know we say that, but all my life, I heard, and I did it myself, prayed in a way that like God was over there. We're trying to get God to come over here. God's already here. God's already in there. God's already out there. You see, Jesus said that I am the door, and whoever comes in by the door can go in and out and find pasture. In other words, it doesn't matter if you're in or if you're out, you're blessed. And when we get to Deuteronomy, we're going to see the blessing. That you're blessed going in and you're blessed coming out. Why? Because God is in and God is out. God is inside the ark and God is outside the ark. And God is inviting Noah and his family into the ark. Come into the ark. The ark. Anybody know what the word ark means? The word ark simply means a box. This is not the only ark we'll talk about. There's another ark called the Ark of the Covenant. That word is a different Hebrew word, but the definition is the same. It's a box. So, here's something I want to impress on each of us today, is that the box was intended, it's also called a container. The ark was a container. It was a box, a container. The reason why that he was instructed to pitch it inside and out, which was put a kind of a tar substance on all the cracks, was so the box would float. But it was a box, and he's going to make a floating box. There's something interesting about each one of us. We have often, and people that are not even consciously on a spiritual path do this as well. We refer to our bodies as a container. So we've even called it a box. Now, some of us are more boxy than others, but and some are more. You got some people say that the sanctuary, and then some people say that the Colosseum. It's, there are all sizes to the container and various shapes. But the point is that our bodies are represented metaphorically by the ark. And really more specifically, when we get to the point where we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant, you're going to see that it perfectly correlates with the human form. And so I'm submitting to you today that metaphorically the ark that we're referring to here is about the body. And when we end this thing, you'll see more why that seems to make sense to me. So divine mind is making an invitation to the person to come into the ark. I love a beautiful psalm. Matter of fact, I marked it. I want to read it to you that goes into this. This is something that people have used to encourage themselves for generations. Psalm 91 says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked, because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. No evil shall befall you." This is all about what we have been talking about for 8 years. That once you get your mind in a right place, thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. When you allow your mind, let's just get where we are right now. The people who are so distraught about this election, their mind is on a place that is designed to cause distress. And if you are one of the people that are distressed, let me give you an invitation. Come into the ark. There's a safe place for everyone. And for those that would have felt the same way had it been the other way, I would make the same invitation. Come into the ark. There is a place that has been divinely designed, and it's actually within each one of us. This is the ark. This is the container. We are never going to fix the world by focusing on the world. We can only fix the world by focusing on our own self. Politics can't fix this world. But we can fix the world by fixing ourselves. My invitation to you today is come into the ark. Come into the safe place. Come into the secret place of the Most High. Because he that dwelleth in that place, no evil shall befall him or her. How's that? Do you believe it? Will you receive that? Then don't get distracted by all the noise that's taking place in the media, on Facebook, on Twitter, whatever it is. Don't get distracted by that. I've had to remind myself over and over. Listen, I've made no secret of the fact that I have a position in the politics of our country. I have an opinion. I have a position. But I was ready to give mine up, if that was the necessary thing to do. Because I'm telling you, I know where my peace is. Here's what Jesus said. He said, hold your peace. My parents told me that, and that they meant for me to shut up. But I got a new take on that. Hold your peace. I mean, don't let somebody else take your peace. Don't let what somebody else thinks. Don't let how somebody else votes. Don't let how somebody else governs impinge on your peace. You hold it. Because they cannot take your peace from you. No one can take your peace from you. No one can take your peace from you. The moment you start feeling assailed, come into the ark. Just come on in. It's nice in here. It's quiet in here. God is already in here. It's God that's saying, you don't like what you're seeing out there? What do you think Noah was seeing based on what we talked about last week? What do you think Noah, his wife, and his children were seeing based on what we read last week? It had to be chaotic. It had to be quite ugly. It may have been the ugliest election of all times. You get my drift? So you can't focus on that. You just can't do it. If you do, then you start... Listen, there were points in this process I let myself get too interested in what was being said. And boy, it affected my emotion. I get emotionally affected by it. And I thought, that's stupid. Carnley, you know better than that. Come into the ark. Get out of there. Get yourself out of there. We're not going to... I'm in this world, but I am not of this world. I'm going to look up, because that's where my redemption comes from the up place, not the down. I'm going to think positive. I'm not going to let myself get negative. No matter who is in the White House, I'm not going to let myself get into a negative deal. I'm not going to let the president determine what kind of life I'm going to have. I'm just not going to let that happen. You know what's great about America? It's still we the people. You know why? That was a divine thought. We the people. No matter who gets in there, call them King George if you want to, but whoever gets in there, they have no control of my peace without my permission. So every time I start feeling stress, I say, come into the ark. Man, we could just stay here all Sunday, couldn't we? Isn't that just like a preacher said he's going to talk about a whole chapter and spend the whole time on the first line? Then the Lord said to Noah, come into the ark, you and all your household, because I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. And so we've read this generation after generation in Sunday school, and the idea, we came away with the idea that this was the divine deity's reward to good behavior. But I want to show you something today, and we're going to see this over and over again. Behavior is rewarded by the law of sowing and reaping, or what some people call karma. There is no deity out there pulling strings. If you ever get a chance, go to Washington, go into the Lincoln Memorial and read the speech that Lincoln wrote. I can't quote it to you. I've actually got a picture of it somewhere, but there's a line in there that I'll never forget. He talked about that both sides during the Civil War were praying to the same God. I want you to understand that God's not pulling strings for the right to punish the left. And is not going to pull strings for the left to punish the right. God doesn't do that. Both sides are praying to the same God. And both sides are using the same divine energy to produce their experience through their own thought process. That's what happened in the days of Noah. And he was watching the majority act in a way that did not comport with his thought process. And because of his thought process, he was invited into the safe place. The invitation was good for everybody. Do you think anybody was not invited into the ark just because this says specifically Noah and his children? Everybody was invited into the ark. They were not in a frame of mind to hear the invitation. And this is what happens to us. We can get so lost in negative thoughts that we can't hear the positive side of a thing. We just can't hear it. And then we can't see it. And so then we don't experience it. So we believe our experience more than we believe the truth. Your experience is not the truth. It is a reality based on your thought process. The truth is the truth regardless of my experience. I like what I see somebody post there once in a while. The Lord is my healer in spite of what my body may be telling me. Listen, this happens all the time. When we watch Jesus' ministry, I love what Bob Proctor said. Jesus made no agreement with blindness. Isn't that cool? But Jesus made no agreement with crippledness. Jesus made no agreement with what was wrong with a person. You remember when he saw the man with the withered hand? What did he tell him to do? Well, I'm sure sorry about that withered hand. What did Jesus say? Did he say that? I sure am sorry about your withered hand. What did he say? Come on, tell me what he said. What? Stretch out the mind is saying, I can't. Jesus said, do what you have previously said you cannot do. What about the man that was crippled, paralyzed on the bed? What did he tell him to do? Get up. Get up from there and walk. Are y'all in the house? You see, what happens is we become victims of our thought process. I don't know if you saw this, a lady from Oregon who was watching the message when we were talking about the woman caught in the act of adultery. Did you read her little deal that she made a comment? If you can go find that on Facebook, read it. She said it better than I will. But basically she said what Jesus did when he told the woman who was caught in the act of adultery to go and sin no more, go and don't think like that anymore. Change the way you're thinking. Change your mind. Don't let what other people say about you determine who you are. Is that good? See, that's why I love this. That's why, to me, this is the true gospel. The word gospel means good news. If somebody preaches to you and they leave you feeling worse than you felt when you came, you didn't hear the gospel. When you hear the gospel, you should feel better than you did when you came. And we're going to get a little gospel here today. So if anything is stressing you, bothering you, let me just make the divine invitation to you. It's a standing invitation. Come into the ark. Here's what I find that's really interesting. We've already talked about the 7 clean animals and then the 2x2s that came in. I find it interesting that when this world was in this, without question, chaotic condition, divine mind is always thinking about preservation, preserving. So we take into the safe place the things that we want to protect. We want to protect our families. We should want to protect the environment. I can't imagine that anyone of any political persuasion would be okay with damaging our earth. Or our air, or our water. Can you imagine that? How many of y'all try to drink out of your toilet? I mean, you have a choice. You could drink out of the toilet, but don't you go to the sink and get you some fresh water? Who doesn't want fresh water? Who doesn't want fresh air? And let me tell you something. Everybody has a right to fresh water and fresh air. Everybody has a right to that. You have a divine right to that. And people should comport themselves in a way that supports that divine idea. Because one of the things, forget politics, what we should all be for is life. Say, I am for life. Say it with me. I am for life. And everything that entails. Life. I'm for it. I am for life. God is for life. If God was not for life, there would have been no ark. There would have been no animals taken on that ark. This proves that God was, is, and always will be for life. God is life. How could God not be for itself? God is life. God is for life. God is the principle of life itself. And so when things get completely wacko, if I will not submit to the wackoness, I have a standing invitation to come into the ark and to use, here's the second thing I want to leave with you, my influence. Not to manipulate anyone, but to influence people to a higher way of thinking and living. Now here's what happens to people. People say, I don't have any influence. Nobody listens to me. Let me tell you a little story that's personal. Jan and I had been married 2 years, and almost 2 years. And we gave birth to our first child, little boy. His name is Joe Trent. We never heard him cry. We never changed his diaper. We held him, we saw him, and we buried him because he was stillborn. I want you to know that our life to this day is still very influenced by Joe Trent, who never cried, who never said a word. And 41 years later, we can never forget, and we never forget, Joe Trent. I want to tell you something. You have influence. You have influence. You have influence. And there is power in preservation. We have a divine responsibility to preserve life in all of its forms. Let me say it again, to preserve life in all of its forms. We have a divine responsibility to preserve things that we may in other situations find to be against us. If the right ever wants to destroy the left in this country, it cannot do it without destroying itself. If the left wants to destroy the right in this country, it cannot do it without destroying itself. The left and the right are two sides of one thing. And that's the 3D world we're living in right now. You may not like each other, but you need each other. And so I encourage you to love each other. Do you hear me? Love each other. Do you hear me? Love each other. You don't have to love somebody's position, and you can still love them. Is there an amen in this house? I'd like to hear the people in Facebook say amen. I'm going to wait. Did y'all hear them say amen out there? Because everybody knows that the whole impetus of life itself is the essence of love. And love is without agreement. Love does not have to have agreement. I tell you this every time I think about it, that movie, The Love Story, that one line when the girl looked at the guy and said, love is never having to say, I'm sorry. Listen, if I love you and you have offended my ego, I want to tell you right now, you don't owe me an apology. You don't owe me an apology. Why do I need you to apologize to me? I love you. Are y'all still here? What if this comes to America? What if what I'm talking about comes to America and America comes into the ark? Oh. And we start using our love as an influence. I don't mean trying to get people to do what you want them to do, go where you want them to go. I'm talking about love them no matter what they do, love them no matter where they go, love them no matter how they vote. Love them. Love them. When somebody starts loving me like that, they have influence over me. This is the power of preservation. And Mr. Noah and Mrs. Noah loved their children, the lawful and the unlawful. They took their boys and their boys' wives into the box with them. And the only thing that could have made it so was Mr. and Mrs. Noah must have loved their children. Because let me tell you, the voice out there, the media out there was completely fixed on an opposite view of what Noah was practicing. I don't care how much the odds are against you. I don't care how big the numbers are for whatever seems to be in opposition to you. There's a place in you that's more powerful than all the opposition in the world. It's in the ark. So I'm asking you, come into the ark today and love, not based on how people are talking, acting, or doing, but love because you are life. Say it with me. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. The only way into the ark is by me. Who is me? I am. Is this good? Everybody's got influence. And that leads us to the third and final thing. Here's what happened as the flood began to take place. Noah, when the flood happened, was 600 years old. We found out way back in chapter 5 that when Noah started having children, he was 500 years old. Then when the warning came, the chronological order, you have to be real careful or you'll miss the chronological order of things. The countdown to the flood happened 120 years before the flood. I will not always strive with man. 120 years will be the days of man on the earth. In other words, the flood's going to happen in 120 years. So 120 years, a warning came to Noah. He felt it. The intuition told him it can't keep going like this. But look how long it waited. 120 years. Remember what I told you about grace? You know, Noah found grace. You remember it? The discovery of grace. Grace is the space to change your mind. That's the reason why every fleeting thought that you have doesn't come into manifestation. Thank God it doesn't, or we'd have killed ourselves a long time ago, right? But you have to persevere in a thought. You have to hold a thought. Apparently in our story, people held a wrong thought for 120 years while the ark was available and refused what was available to them because they were so locked into their thought process that when you read Romans chapter 12, Paul said this, that the whole earth is groaning, waiting for the revealing of the sons of God. What does that mean? If I'm understanding it right, it means simply this. Until people like you and me begin to understand who we are, the earth will never be at its optimal because we are thinking in ways that are against ourselves. And the earth is so connected to us, we came from this dust. This came from the dust, and it will go back to this dust. We are integral to Mother Earth. And so the earth is in harmony and tune with how we're moving, thinking, and acting. So the earth is groaning, waiting for the revealing of the sons of God. But when everybody in here starts realizing, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, and I love you no matter what your preferences are, no matter how you act, no matter, I may disagree with how you act, but I love you no matter how you act. And so, let me clarify that some more. It isn't okay for you to say, well, I love you no matter how I act, but you need to stop acting like that. That's none of your business. Your business is not to tell people how to act. Your business is to love people no matter how they act. Do you know, divine mind, if I'm understanding it, doesn't even want you to have an opinion about that. It's none of your business. That's their walk. It's not your walk. Take care of your walk. If everybody would sweep around their own front door, the world would be fixed overnight. That's all we got to do, is just take care of my own business. Come into the ark for myself. Love my family. Love my friends. Somebody's going to go in there with me. Not because I told them if they don't, they're going to hell, but because I have loved them no matter what they did. Are y'all in this house with me? Here's what happens when you come in and when you use your influence in a positive way without trying to manipulate people. The thing that ends up taking place is ascension. Now the flood was on the earth 40 days. The waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. Is that good? Come on, y'all got to talk to me. Is that good? That's good, isn't it? You mean all the mess that was happening out here, instead of overwhelming the ark, it lifted the ark up. When you come inside, when you get with God, when you get into your own self. And I like what it said in verse 14. Make yourself an ark. Make a box for yourself. Make a safe place for yourself. And now bring yourself into this ark. And when the flood happens, when all hell breaks loose out there, you're going to be okay. Because the ark is going to ride on the flood. It's called ascension. Is that good? The waters covered, it goes on to say, the waters covered the earth, covered the highest mountains, and the ark moved upon the face of the waters. We can only save this world, and this is my final word and thought to you. We can only save this world by saving ourselves. What if Noah would not have saved himself? The world was saved because Noah saved himself. Good? The world is going to be fine if you're fine. If you're fine, the world will be fine. But if you're broken, if you're distressed, if you're distraught, your world is going to be that same way. But if you will not descend into that, then and you will come instead into the ark, then whatever's happening out there, you're going to ride on it. Are y'all ready to ride, Clyde? Are y'all good? I'm done. Y'all owe me, don't you? Is this good news? This is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Don't ever forget it. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God thought it's not robbery to be equal with God. Are y'all good? I'm good. I'm done.